I stumbled into a haunted forest that revealed unbelievable dark secrets. I never should have opened that door. It started as just another weekend hike. The sun hung low, spilling golden light across the trees. Birds chirped their evening song, oblivious to the dread that crept into my bones when I crossed the threshold. The temperature dropped, chilling my skin, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. I stepped deeper into the woods, the path narrowing beneath twisted branches. Shadows flickered in my periphery, twisting in shapes too familiar yet too alien. A whisper danced in the air, soft and sinister, making my heart race. Each footfall seemed louder, echoing the silence that surrounded me. The earthy smell of damp soil mixed with something metallic, rusted like long-forgotten secrets that I could barely breathe as the trees formed a thick barrier around me, blocking out the encroaching twilight. My pulse quickened, pounding in my ears. Then, a sudden crack. A branch snapped nearby, and I jerked my head toward the sound. My breath hitched. Nothing, just the uneasy sway of branches above me. More noises followed, a soft rustling, shuffling just beyond my sight. Was it an animal? Or something far worse? My mind raced. The path twisted, and before I knew it, I had lost all sense of direction. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their gnarled roots reaching out like skeletal hands. I could feel them watching that I pushed on, adrenaline fueling my every step. Then, I saw a glimpse of something white, darting between the trees. My hands trembled. Was it a spirit? It couldn't be. I thought of turning back, but each step felt heavier now, drawing me closer to whatever waited in the darkness. The cold seeped deeper into my bones, making it impossible to think. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, battling the rising tide of panic. When I opened them again, everything changed. I was not alone. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, shrouded in shadow. I couldn't make out features, just a shape, an outline that whispered my name, a familiar voice that was anything but friendly, and just like that, the air grew thick. My lungs froze. I could only stand there, transfixed, terror clawing at my throat. Then, the world went dark, and the scream of a distant echo shattered the silence. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I awoke sprawled on the forest floor, the damp earth chilling me to the bone. My heart raced as I sat up, confusion tinged with a suffocating dread. The trees loomed higher now, their gnarled limbs twisting impossibly, as if they were alive, stretching toward me with malevolent intent. Panic surged anew, chasing away the remnants of unconsciousness. If I had passed out, what else had happened while I lay there? Then I heard it, a faint hum, muffled and haunting, suffusing the air with an otherworldly pull. It threaded through the trees like a sinister lullaby, beckoning me deeper into the heart of the woods. I hesitated, my instinct screaming to flee, yet a dark curiosity tugged at my feet, anchoring me in place. The whispering branch shadows twisted and writhed, dancing as though they celebrated my indecision. That I glanced down at my hands, dirt-streaked and trembling, and realized I still held my phone, its screen cracked and dark, lifeless. No signal, no light to guide me home, only the pressing silence that seemed to close in like a vice. With a forced breath, I pushed to my feet, the weight of invisible eyes trailing my every move. The path wound beneath my feet, almost alive, pulsating as I stepped upon it, a morbid heartbeat that seemed to synchronize with my own racing pulse. That is when I noticed the markings on the trees, crude carvings that looked almost like faces, twisted expressions etched into the bark, frozen in torment. They all seemed to stare at me, their mouthless visages silently screaming secrets I was not meant to understand. A chill gripped my spine, but I could not detach my gaze. Could this be some sort of warning? The hum grew louder, weaving between the trees until it morphed into harmonious whispers, a cacophony of disembodied voices, their urgency overwhelming. No matter how much I willed myself to drown them out, the words crept into my psyche. Find her, set her free. The message rippled through my thoughts, sending a shiver down my spine, igniting something primal in my heart, a need to comply, to act. That I staggered forward, the ground soft beneath my feet, holding on to the thin thread of resolve that kept me moving. As I pressed deeper into the darkness, I caught another glimpse of white out of the corner of my eye. A figure, more distinct now, gliding between the trees, distinctly female, her translucent form flickering, shifting like an ethereal flame. "Help me," she called, her voice a soft caress that spoke directly to my soul. I felt drawn to her, an inexplicable urge to reach out and comfort the spectral apparition. Energy crackled in the air around me, chilling my breath as I acknowledged her fear, her sorrow threading through my heart with an icy grip. But as I stumbled closer, the forest erupted around me. Branches snapped like bones, and a gust of wind whipped past, carrying with it sounds of whispered threats, a symphony of malignant promises. Shadows darted through the underbrush, growing darker, thicker, until a swirl of darkness enveloped the white figure, enveloping her in shadows that writhed and curled like tendrils of smoke. "No!" I screamed, lunging toward her, but the air felt thick as mud, resisting my efforts as the shadows pulled her deeper into the darkened veil. Her eyes locked on mine, pleading, full of terror, before she was devoured by the encroaching blackness. And then silence. The bright, penetrating chaos outside melted into an unnerving quiet. The trees stood frozen, their branches still and expectant as if holding their breath. I stood alone in the suffocating stillness, my pulse ringing loud and frantic in my ears. A single tear escaped down my cheek, and in that moment, I knew what lay waiting behind the veil, a horrific truth interwoven into the depths of this haunted wood. Suddenly, a guttural growl emanated from the thickening shadows, a sound that felt ancient, primal. It filled the space around me, reverberating through my bones, warning me that the hunt had just begun. Fear clawed at my throat as I turned, the darkness pulsing with life, ready to strike. I pivoted toward where I hoped the path might be, heart hammering, only to find the space around me flickering. The reality itself warped, the trees bending, twisting into knots as something shifted in the air, an unknown presence unfurling. And there, looming at the corner of my vision, I saw it, a face emerging from the shadows, its features indistinguishable yet grotesquely familiar, fading in and out like the flicker of a dying flame. It held something in its hand, something that glinted like a blade, ominous and beckoning. "Find her," the voices echoed again, this time more urgent, pulling me towards the darkness. My heart thundered in protest as I backed away, every instinct telling me to flee. But the ground beneath me rumbled, splitting open, inviting me into the abyss that I in that moment, the horrors I sought to escape enveloped me, and as I teetered on the edge of despair, I made my choice. Gripping the unearthed truth tightly, I dove deeper into the darkness, the forest swallowing my scream. The moment I lunged into the darkness, the air thickened around me, squeezing the breath from my lungs. It was as if I were diving into a frozen lake, the icy grip of dread wrapping around my chest, dragging me down into the depths of another world. The shadows embraced me, snaking through my limbs, whispering promises that twisted into threats as I fell deeper into the void. With every passing heartbeat, the echoes of the forest faded into a haunting silence, replaced by the sound of my own ragged breaths. I blinked, trying to adjust to the new darkness, and slowly, shapes began to materialize around me. Twisted trees loomed, their branches jagged like clawed hands, desperate to snatch me back. But it wasn't just the trees that frightened me, it was the memories that surrounded me, fragmentary images glimmering in the dark like refracted light from a broken mirror. That I stumbled forward, the uneven ground littered with remnants of the past, shattered dolls, rusted toys, and torn fabrics that clung to the roots like desperate pleas for release. Each step sent chills racing up my spine, as the murmurs grew louder, their tones shifting from a lure to a cacophony of lamentation. I could feel the sorrow of the lost, the lingering echoes of lives once lived and abruptly misled. That I stopped, suddenly overwhelmed as my surroundings pulsated with emotion. The spectral figures began to appear, faces contorted in eternal agony, drifting through the shadows like memories caught between this world and the next. Their limbs were devoid of substance, yet their eyes burned bright with a desperation that nearly consumed me. "Help us," they whispered in unison, the sound reverberating through the hollow chambers of my heart. "Free her." A low growl erupted again, but this time it wasn't the only sound. Faint cries of despair mingled with the growls, a ghastly symphony that resonated with the very depths of my fears. Shadows swirled, coalescing into a serpentine form that writhed like smoke, coiling around the spirits that reached for me. They waited hungry for release, clinging to the idea that I would somehow save them. A flicker of light caught my eye, an area just ahead where the dark seemed to falter. Elongated limbs stretched toward it, sealing my fate with each step towards the brightness. But the pull of the shadows was strong, and I felt their icy fingers grazing my skin, clawing desperately as if to protect their secrets. My breath hitched, desperation racing through me. "No!" I gasped, spinning in place, but the familiarity of their whispers only grew more insistent. "Find her," they chanted, a haunting echo intertwined with the growls. "You are our salvation." Suddenly, the air shimmered, and the scene morphed. I found myself standing in a clearing bathed in ghostly silver light, illuminated by a large, luminous moon that seemed to pulse with life. In the center lay a small, withered body shrouded in cobwebs, the remnants of what had once been a child. Her eyes were closed, a peace marking her frail features, but beneath that serenity lay layers of sorrow, tears long dried in an endless slumber. "Help her," a single voice broke free from the cacophony, strong yet trembling. It pulled at my heart, demanding attention. I felt the unseen eyes of the forest burning into me, a million stares of expectation, urging me to commit to this choice, this sacrifice. Suddenly, a shattered scream erupted behind me. The shadows hadn't receded, they surged forward, drawn to my growing dread as the form of twisted malevolence emerged, all sharpened teeth and blood-red eyes, hungry for the light that I now found myself guarding. It reached for me, tendrils of darkness coiling around my ankles, dragging me back into the depth of despair I thought I had escaped. "No!" I screamed, my voice raw with terror. I grappled with the decision tearing at my core: save the child, or flee before the coming darkness consumed me. The ground rumbled beneath me, vibrating with the weight of my choice, and I realized time had run out. In an instant, I dropped to my knees, pulling at the cobwebs that held the child captive. The shadows hissed, furious at my defiance, devoid of compassion as they pulled relentlessly at my soul. I felt myself tearing apart, light fracturing against darkness, and just as I felt hope bloom in the face of despair, the chilling figure of the beast loomed closer, teeth glistening with malice. "Free her!" It roared, echoing all around me, the air thickening with its rancid breath that I couldn't look away from the child's face, so serene, yet so hauntingly full of life lost. With a final, desperate tug, I freed her from the web that held her, my scream echoing in the stillness. And then, the world shattered. A blinding light exploded around us, enveloping the clearing, as the shadows shrieked in anger, the very fabric of the forest trembling toward collapse. My heart raced wildly as I embraced the child, not knowing if she was salvation or the harbinger of worse horrors, but something stirred behind me. An absence of sound, a void where the shadows had been, nothing remained, save a looming presence that promised unspeakable pain. "Why did you leave?" It whispered, voice a cold caress that brushed along my spine. And just like that, I was pulled back into the maw of darkness, the choice I had made echoing in the stillness, a price I was yet to understand. The darkness wrapped around me like a shroud, suffocating and heavy. I was no longer certain of where I was or what I had unleashed by freeing the child from her spectral bindings. The clearing that had felt so warm was now a hollow cage, resonating with the sounds of my own panicked breaths and the scintillating whispers of something ancient and hungry closing in. The child's small form remained in my arms, her skin cold and pale, untouched by the fingers of death that had claimed her for so long. I could feel her heartbeat pulsing faintly against my chest, a flicker of life in the abyss of despair. But as I looked down, the serene expression had morphed into something unsettling, a grimace that spoke of suffering. her lips pulling back slightly to reveal a hint of sharp, predatory teeth. My heart sank. Help them. Her voice was smooth, unearthly yet coaxing, laced with an intoxicating sweetness that stung my ears. Did she mean the shadows? Those dark remnants of sorrow and regret? Or something more insidious lurking just out of sight in the stillness surrounding us? The moment shattered as I sensed movement behind me. With a quick glance, I saw them, phantoms crawling from the depths of the woodland, their forms twisted and gnarled, bound in the chains of their own despair. They reached for me, scraping their ghostly fingers against the ground as they groaned out a symphony of agony. Please, they whispered, their voices layered and discordant, a haunting chorus that chilled my blood. Release us. But what did they mean? The reflection of the child in my arms began to rip away further into the depths of her visage, revealing eyes that shimmered not with innocence, but with an unsettling knowledge of the abyss. I knew I would stand at the crossroads of a terrible decision: again the children or the shadows, salvation or despair. My mind raced as I looked to the moon, a hulking silver mass that seemed to pulse with each beat of my heart, its glow illuminating the forest in a surreal, otherworldly glow. And then there was the growl, deeper and more primal than anything before. It echoed through the air, thick with tension, a sound that radiated power and rage. The shapeless darkness began to churn, coalescing into an abomination of nightmarish features that glared down at me with eyes that were burning, hungry, and full of malice. You don't understand, the creature hissed. You've already chosen. I staggered back, weighing the growing sense of dread igniting a flame of instinct in my gut. The shadows clawed at the edges of my vision, reaching out for the child, pleading, groaning. The beast snarled, its fangs gleaming as it crouched close. You can't save them. The only way to escape is to bind her to me, it breathed, a rancid, fetid breath that licked at my face like a foul wind. No. I refuse to let you take her, I shouted in defiance, clutching the child tightly against my chest, her heartbeat strangely synchronized with every pulse of light from the moon casting shadows that danced at our feet, a ballet of grief and loss. As I turned back toward the clearing, the moon flickered, and in that instant, I caught sight of something, a shadow lurking just beyond the rim of the light, a dark figure watching, waiting, its shape shifting like smoke caught in a breeze. My breath quickened, it felt alive, an entity that breathed despair as if it were air, curling closer toward the moonlight. Help us! The chorus borne from the forest echoed louder now, the cries merging with the growling creature, a cacophony that twisted my thoughts until I couldn't think straight. I was losing ground, the whispers growing sharper, more insistent. You can save us all if you just give in. Feed it. In that moment of profound confusion, the child in my arms began to wriggle, her frail limbs stirring. I glanced down just as she opened her eyes wide, now glowing unnaturally, laughter bubbling forth, a dark, jovial sound that echoed through the trees as if siphoning off the shadows themselves. Release them all, she giggled, a voice not her own mingling with the cries of the trapped souls. Let them feast. What had I unleashed? My heart thundered in my chest as the shadows encircled us, burying me in their grip while the child's laughter became a sinister melody. I could feel the overwhelming weight of a collective yearning, the spirits of the forest tightening their grasp around my mind, ready to drag me into an endless night. Before I could process my next move, the ground quaked violently, and the hideous beast lunged toward me, mouth wide. I could feel the shadows unraveling, spilling into chaos around me as I stood frozen in terror, the child's laughter ringing in my ears, and then everything went dark. The apocalypse echoed in never-ending whispers, a maelstrom of despair that raged around me as I realized I had surrendered to the darkness. But one dreadful question lingered still, eating at the back of my mind: what would I have to give up to escape? As silence fell, a chaotic stillness engulfed the forest, leaving me teetering on the edge of madness, and I was plunged into the depths of another chilling revelation. In this terrible place, the truth was waiting, hidden within the depths of the shadows, and the light, it seemed, was no longer mine to control. The silence enveloped me, a thick blanket of unease that clawed at my throat, suffocating my screams. The air shimmered with an unsettling energy, a pulse that throbbed beneath my skin as if the very forest had come alive with a dread I had never known. Then, like a candle flickering in a storm, the cold whispered of forgotten horrors, a faint flicker of warmth battling against an encroaching night that I stumbled forward, tripping over roots that twisted like fingers aiming to pull me into darkness. The shadows, once ethereal but now growing bolder, slithered along the ground, stretching and contorting with an insatiable hunger. I held the child tight against me, her laughter still echoing between the trees, a detached, mocking sound that twisted in my gut. Her eyes, those glowing orbs filled with mischief, fueled my despair. Let them feast, she had said. But what feast would they seek? My heart raced as I remembered the faces of the spirits, their hollow, pleading eyes searching for salvation, yet what they craved was something I could not, would not give. The very thought of it sent tendrils of terror lacing through my mind, the ground beneath my feet pulsed like the very heart of a sleeping beast, a rhythm that echoed the growling laughter resonating from the depths of the forest. Branches creaked overhead, shadows twisted into agonizing shapes, and the dark figure lurked just beyond the veil of my sight, always there, watching, waiting for the moment I would falter that I closed my eyes, forcing back the rising panic as I remembered the object that had drawn me into this hell, a small, frozen artifact that barely resembled a key. Its secrets were buried somewhere within this nightmare, and as I pieced the fragmented trail of my memories together, I realized it might be the only way to break free. But there was no time to dwell. Twisting around, I felt the energy shift. The dark entity that had taken on a palpable form surged closer, a palpable presence blocking my path. I could see it clearer now, an earthy fog sculpting into fearsome limbs, the remnants of spirits trapped within its own mass, eyes sunken in torment and rage locked eternally in shades of lost potential. Its voice slithered from its being, a sickly whisper that rattled my core. Why do you resist? It hissed, a slithering sound that pulsed with a blazing hunger. You have already embraced the darkness. Why not consume it? Never. I yelled, my defiance roaring to life, full of the misguided hope that I could still fight this madness. A sudden shriek erupted behind me as one of the phantoms lunged forward, breaking free from the shadows. I turned, horrified, to see it clawing at the child, but instead of terror, she laughed louder, her cruel joy echoing through the silence. The creature's fingers reached towards her, and I surged forward, pushing the child's form behind me at all costs, my heart racing with a protective instinct I barely understood. The ghost shrieked again, a sound filled with longing, grief, and an insatiable rage that thrived on consuming my very essence. Release us, you fool. We are not your enemy. She is. Let her join us. Let her be one of us. Suddenly, the shadows writhed, forming jagged echoes of tormented faces that merged into one another as they howled, their voices blending into a chaotic harmony of despair. The grotesque entity towered above me, glowing, shifting, a cavalcade of intertwining monstrosities hovering in a sea of twisted shadows. The moonlight flared above, throwing bizarre shapes amongst the chaos, illuminating the remaining secrets hidden deep in the forest. I caught sight of flickering shadows of children intertwined with the branches, elongated faces frozen in agonized expressions. Did they not deserve freedom too? My heart was a battle of conflicting desires. As I glanced back down at the child in my arms, if I chose one, I might have to sacrifice the others. Just then, the child's body convulsed slightly, her laughter morphing into a dissonant scream. I stared in horror as her body began to ripple like water disturbed by a terrible force, her form flickering between the innocent girl I had saved and the dark mass asking for a release. Which one are you? I gasped, my breath hitching in my throat. In that terrifying moment, the trees shuddered violently, the foliage around me screaming, just as the earth beneath my feet began to crack, the shadows swirling faster, creating a vortex of pure, unfiltered despair. I was losing myself, the shadows calling to me, begging to envelop me completely if I'd allow. But what price would accompany that desire? Then, across the maelstrom, features began to form in the darkness, the countless faces melding into something recognizable yet grotesque. Among them, the form of a child stared back at me, a twisted reflection of my own fears. One last desperate measure ignited within me. Summoning the last of my will, I howled to the depths, I won't let you take anyone else. Not her. Not me. Yet, in that moment of despair, amid the cacophony of wails and laughter, the ground opened wider beneath me, and the truth revealed itself in a blinding flash of nightmare. A choice I never wanted to make clawed at my heart, offering an unbearable sacrifice. The shadows lunged, the beast roared, and as the darkness enveloped my world, a chilling whisper curled into my ears, "The final choice is yours to offer." Before I understood, the engulfing void swallowed me whole. And in that darkness, I thought I could hear the laughter again, a twisted melody carried on the wind, echoing through an unspeakable eternity. The darkness pressed around me, cold and wet like the breath of the grave, but my surroundings began to shift, the chaos of the previous moments swallowed by a smothering silence. I became aware of a sound beneath the stillness, distant echoes, a drumming pulse resonating in the air, rhythmic yet erratic, like the beating heart of a dying creature. It drew me forward, luring me into its depths. That I stumbled again, though this time it was roots that tripped me. Instead, it was a soft whisper on the breeze, insidious and enticing. "Come, come find us." The voices layered over one another, whispers that faded and surged, dipping through notes of innocent mirth and haunting despair. Panic tightened my chest as I recalled the hungry entity lurking beyond my sight, still behind me, still waiting. As I moved deeper into the wood, the landscape morphed unpredictably. The trees towered higher, their twisted limbs becoming grotesque arms reaching out to ensnare me. Glimpses of pale faces appeared amidst the bark, eyes filled with mourning and a terrible yearning. It was as if the forest itself had come alive, each tree a witness to the horrors that had played out upon its soil. Were those the souls of the children, longing to escape or beckoning towards something darker? Suddenly, a new sound pierced the air, a child's laughter, echoing clearly, yet it bore no joy. I felt it vibrate through the ground. It was cutting, cruel. I followed it helplessly, drawn to its sharpness, praying for salvation from this relentless nightmare, but knowing, with every step, it might lead to something far worse. As the laughter cascaded through the glade, its tone mutated into cries of anguish, blending effortlessly with the whispers. Help us, they begged, but I couldn't tell if I was hearing the lost spirits or if it was the child in my arms, her essence fracturing further with every moment spent within this waking dream. I could sense her battling with the force that sought to claim her, a tempest of innocence and terror coiling around us. But then the laughter cascaded again, stretching and pulling, a twisted serenade that grounded my feet as if the earth itself wanted me to kneel. There was a clearing ahead, bathed in light that felt artificial, cold. At its center stood a statue, a half-buried guardian wrought from ancient stone, a grotesque effigy of wide-eyed children caught in exquisite torment. Their hands reached outward, faces frozen in expressions of despair. What had happened to them? Once guardians of innocence, they had become the embodiment of lost hope. As I stepped closer, the child screamed in my arms, thrashing violently, any remaining semblance of joy evaporating like a mist disturbed by dawn. "Don't let them take me. I'm not one of them." She clawed at the air, her voice reverberating through the woodland, suddenly filled with desperation. I sought to calm her, but dread gnawed at my mind. What if she was wrong? What if she was already lost? The laughter crescendoed again, more frantic, as if it sprang from the very core of the earth. "Join us! Join us!" The chorus rose, a rising tide of demand that brought with it a suffocating weight. I clutched the artifact in my pocket, my only anchor to the world of the living. Had it once been a key to salvation, or was it yet another cruel trap? Anxiety etched lines into my soul, and I found myself teetering on the edge of madness. It was then that I spotted figures moving just beyond the edge of the clearing, fleeting shadows circling, whispering secrets I couldn't grasp, faces morphing in the flickering periphery. A chill coursed down my spine as I recognized them, the lost children, their faces as familiar as my own, suspended in a snapshot of time, turned to me with eyes wide in pleading horror. "Let us out! Save us! You must choose!" They cried, voices melding into a haunting symphony, each word thick with the pain of betrayal. The shadows coalesced, drawing closer, and I felt the chilling grip of despair closing in on me once again. "Choose," I whispered, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Was I to select one to save, or would the sacrifice curse them all further? The pressure intensified, pulsating like the heartbeat of the forest. The child's laughter shifted again, morphing like the shifting shadows into something crueler still. You still don't understand. There's no escape unless you let go of the last shred of light within you. And as dread pooled within me, that flickering light dimmed, replaced by a wave of sadness and longing I couldn't control. I staggered back, the ground shifting more violently now, becoming a whirlpool of darkness closing around me. My heart raced, realizing I was not just witnessing this catastrophe, I was becoming part of it. Just as I lost my footing, the stone guardian burst alive, a scream erupting from its mouth, blending with my own. The children's soft cries morphed into an anguished wail as the shadows grasped for me, clawing, pulling, striking like vipers. I recognized faces within that grotesque form, each one twisting in agony as they pressed against the boundaries of reality. In that moment of near surrender, in a last breath of desperation, I clutched the artifact tightly, feeling its cold surface throb against my palm. And with a single instinctual plea, I shouted into the howling abyss of despair, I won't choose. I will not conform. Just then, the very fabric of the forest quaked, and a blinding flash erupted before me, illuminating the chaos in a veil of momentary clarity. But before I could grasp what it revealed, that unforgiving darkness consumed me again, drenching me in a chilling embrace, and among the cacophony of anguished screams and tortured laughter, a new whisper emerged, chilling my blood. You have no choice but to see, and what you see will shake the boundaries of your very soul. The darkness was thicker now, a suffocating embrace that wrapped around me like a shroud. My heart thundered in my chest, every beat echoing the desperate plea of the child in my arms, and I strained to make out her features in the oppressive gloom. Her tiny hands clutched at me, trembling, as her eyes darted around, searching for something or someone. What's happening? She stammered, her voice a fragile thread in the tempest of chaos surrounding us. The statue stood sentinel, frozen in anguish, but now it seemed to pulse as if the stone was alive, resonating with the emotional turmoil around us. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of agony and sorrow mixed with a sinister glee. I forced one foot before the other, trying to find my path back, but the ground beneath me felt like rippling water, shifting, swallowing sound and light. Look! The child pointed, her voice rising, a mere tremor at the edge of panic. They're coming. They want you to see. Against my better judgment, I turned my gaze towards the shadows. They stretched towards me like limbs of the night, cloaked figures emerging from the underbrush, their forms indistinguishable in the veil of gloom. Faces twisted in anguish creepily blended with fleeting smiles, eliciting that maddening laughter once more, its edges laced with malice. In stark contrast to the pulsing terror of the atmosphere, the clearing now revealed fleeting glimpses of past horrors. Flickers of images flashed before my eyes, scenes of laughter shattered by fear, children playing only to be consumed by darkness, their giggles replaced by blood-curdling screams. I staggered back instinctively, the memories clawing at the recesses of my mind. Stop! Please, stop! I begged, my voice hoarse as the air grew thick with desperation. No more! But the shadows just swirled closer, and the laughter deepened, their voices coiling around me like a serpent ready to strike. Witness the truth! They chanted, the coldness of their words vibrating in my bones, urging me to succumb. Suddenly, the ground shifted more violently, ripping apart and revealing a deep chasm swallowing everything in its wake. I felt the tremor of the earth beneath me as the very essence of the forest seemed to rebel. What was this cavern? The whispers changed, moving from laughter to an unholy dirge, a mournful sound that resonated with the agony of countless souls trapped within its depths. Help! Help us! You don't know what you're about to unleash. They cried, the urgency thickening the air. I could see their faces now like reflections casting themselves into infinity, mouths agape in eternal horror, reaching out with bony fingers, and then I noticed something glinting within the chasm, a fragment of metal, shining amidst the darkness, reflecting a sliver of light. Instinctively, it pulled at me, a siren-esque call resonating through the fog of despair. It is the key! The child screamed, her voice cutting through my blurred senses. You must take it. But as I took a single step toward the gaping maw, the laughter escalated into a cacophony of screams, echoing off the trees. The shadows coiled tighter, suffocating and relentless, until every rational thought slipped away. I could feel them, the ancient souls, pressing closer, a horde of tormented figures demanding to be heard, demanding release. No. I screamed in horror, hands shaking. I can't. But the urge to step forward clashed violently with my terrified instincts. My heart hammered in my chest, blurring my vision as I fought against the urge to leap into the abyss, to pluck that shimmering promise of hope from its depths. I could see the faces of the forsaken children, pleading, yearning for freedom and yet utterly lost in the morass of despair. Choose. They insisted, their voices mingling into a frenzied crescendo. Choose before the darkness consumes you too. For a heartbeat, my world stood still, suspended in a fragile moment of clarity amid the chaos. Somehow, I felt tethered to the artifact in my pocket, and the presences of the children bent that tether tighter, coiling around my soul like a noose. With shaking hands, I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing against the cold artifact. The shadows danced and twisted around me, urging my decision in a cacophony: choose. Or face the consequences of your inaction. Please. I cried, my voice echoing off the ever-present shadows. The surrounding darkness pulsated, and the tempest grew fiercer, the ground shuddering beneath me once more. The child clutched my arm, and her grip was a tremor of terror as if she too realized the weight of choice or lack thereof. In that harrowing moment, the unthinkable happened. A former sorrowful whisper surged stronger, wrapping itself around me like a shroud. You have no idea what you must see, but you will soon. And as I stood at the precipice, the shadows drew closer, weaving tighter. Just as I felt myself slipping into the chasm of despair, the world erupted into a blinding light. A voice pierced through the darkness, shrill and primal. Let her go. Everything shattered, spiraling around me like the disintegration of reality itself, and within that ephemeral scream, my grip on the child faltered, hearts breaking as shadows surged, reaching for the very core of my being. The light dimmed, darkness reignited, and the world around me collapsed. As the whispers roared, something cold and wrathful broke through, and with a deafening roar the abyss answered, "You should never have come." The last thing I saw as the shadows swallowed me whole was the apparition of those lost souls rising like a wave, their disappointed faces etched in eternal sorrow merging into one final, chilling scream that echoed through the hollow woods, promising that the horror was far from over. The chill of the void gripped me. I felt myself being unmade, piece by piece, while the shadows clawed at my essence, pulling me deeper into their insatiable hunger. But then, with an unexpected jolt of force, I was thrust back into the clearing, landing painfully on the damp earth. I gasped for breath, the air around me thick and cloying as if it held the weight of death itself. The forest was different now. The trees, once mere sentinels, were draped in an oily black mist, their gnarled branches twisted at unnatural angles as if trying to escape the encroaching darkness. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding in my ears like a funeral dirge, my mind racing with confusion from what had just happened. "Where are you?" I cried, peering into the depths of the shadows that still resonated with that maddening laughter. The child stood frozen, a statue of dread as the atmosphere thickened, suffocating every sound, every sense. "Please, just stay close," I urged her, trying to wrap her in the feeble protection of my embrace, but when I turned to reassess the encroaching darkness, my blood ran cold. They were more than shadows now. Figures emerged, fully formed, white eyes wide with a madness that sent waves of horror rippling through my veins. Their mouths twisted into horrifying grins filled with jagged teeth that glimmered ominously in the faint light, completely devoid of humanity. "Come play with us," they sang, their voices an eerie harmony laced with venom. They swayed back and forth, eerie puppets in a macabre dance, their movements fluid and sinister. Tendrils of the dark mist trailed behind them, creating a bridge between the living and the damned. That I could feel the child tremble against me, her warmth a dim beacon amid the gathering storm. "They're not alive," she whispered, her eyes growing wide with realization. "They were once like us, but they're trapped now." Trapped? The words slipped from my lips, panic threading through my mind. As if holding a mirror to my deepest fears, the figures expanded against the shadows, revealing lifetimes of sorrow etched into their features, their eyes eternally pleading for understanding. Witness the sealed fate. They howled, and I could see now the faint outlines of their lives flickering in and out behind them, each life a flicker of brightness being snuffed out by the overwhelming darkness. I could feel the very fabric of my being falter as their unspeakable agony washed over me like a tide, carrying with it the scent of despair. The child tugged on my sleeve, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. They want to take you too. You can't let them. I turned away from the figures, desperation gnawing at my resolve. The forest pulsed, a foreboding heartbeat echoing through the trees as I felt the very ground shift beneath my feet. If you wish to leave, you must join us. The figures called, voices intertwining into a dark symphony, luring me deeper into their plight. You will understand the true cost of your choice. I stumbled backward, dragging the child with me. No. We need to get out. I screamed over their taunting laughter, but the forest didn't respond. Instead, the trees seemed to shift and sway, leaning forward as if eavesdropping on our very thoughts. As I turned to flee, the path behind me was already gone, swallowed by a thick curtain of mist that encroached, isolating me in this hellish haven. The whispers grew more pronounced, a cacophony mingling layers of sorrow with sinister promises. Please. I begged into the swirling black, feeling its cold breath against my skin. We don't want to stay. We can't. But the shadows seemed to revel in my pleas. A raucous laugh rang through the atmosphere, sending shivers cascading down my spine like icy fingers. You belong to the forest now. The darkness has claimed you. Then I heard a distant wail echoing through the chaos, somehow recognizable. I turned instinctively, the sound clawing its way through my memory, an unbearable weight encased in sorrow. Mommy. A voice called, a child's voice, resonating with unmistakable familiarity. Lila. I gasped. The realization crashing down on me like a tidal wave. Lila. Where are you? Help. Her voice echoed around me, trapped within the walls of shadow. They won't let me go. You have to find me. Fueled by love and desperation, I broke away from the terrifying thrall of the figures, charging toward the origin of the voice. I pushed through the darkness, refusing to be enthralled by their sinister calls, breaking past their murky grasp. The air grew denser, oppressive, as if the very essence of the woods conspired against me. With every step, the shadows thickened. The figures stretched their hands out, grasping for me, whispering promises of despair as I fought my way toward the sound. Suddenly, as I broke through an unseen veil, I came upon a clearing. The light was brighter here, blinding, revealing Lila surrounded by a spectral glow. But before I could reach her, the ground splintered at my feet, sending me tumbling down into a vortex of darkness that shrieked with a myriad of lost souls. Mommy. Please. Lila cried, her figure now encased in an ethereal light that flickered with every heartbeat. As I reached out to her, the abyss groaned, its hunger insatiable, pulling me away from her grasp. No. I screamed, terror filling my every thought as the last thing I saw was her luminous face, fear etched into her features, fading into a void of swirling black as the darkness roared, you will never escape. The forest began to close in, and in that moment, the chilling truth settled over me like a heavy shroud. I was about to lose not just Lila but every last shred of my own soul. I was falling, spiraling into the depths of the unknown as the sinister whispers encroached, an insistent tide that sought to drown my consciousness. Panicked, I clawed at the air, desperate to grasp something, anything that could tether me to reality. But the dark abyss consumed my screams, morphing them into the laughter of unseen horrors that crept closer with each passing moment, and then, as abruptly as it had begun, the descent halted. I landed hard on a cold, damp surface. My body ached, every bruise igniting with fresh pain. It was dark, the kind of abyssal black that suffocated the spirit and twisted the mind. Cautiously, I blinked into the overwhelming absence of light, desperate to regain my bearings. Lila. My voice shattered the silence, echoing off unseen walls. Where was she? Was she still here? The word hung in the air, a fragile thread connecting me to the hope of finding her. I pushed myself up, shaking off the disorientation, and stumbled forward tentatively on a slick, moss-covered ground. Instinctively, I reached out into the darkness, fingers brushing against something cold and metallic. I froze mid-motion. I could not rationalize what touched my skin, but an unnatural pulse throbbed through it, as if it were alive. Heart pounding, I withdrew my hand, now acutely aware of the oppressive stillness surrounding me. The air grew thicker, a palpable tension that clung to my skin like a shroud. "Mommy!" Her sweet voice sang out, clear yet distorted by the oppressive darkness. I turned sharply towards the sound, now echoing closer and louder, threading through me like a spear of hope. "I'm here!" I shouted back, my words reverberating unnaturally, unraveling in a sea of taunting silence. Tendrils of fear crept into my mind, feeding on my dread, as I moved further into the suffocating blackness. Every breath felt laborious, each heartbeat a countdown to an unknown doom. Then, the whispers returned their sinister symphony, a haunting remind, echoing from all directions. "You'll never find her, she's ours now." Panic surged like poison in my veins as I pressed forward, my instincts forcing me to propel through whatever the depths had laid before me. And just as my urgency reached a fever pitch, I stumbled into a patch of silence, where the darkness waned slightly, revealing indistinct shapes cluttered around me. Fallen branches? No. Bones. The ground was littered with remnants, fragments of lives once bloomed in vitality, now reduced to relics of despair. I recoiled, recognizing the hollow sockets of skulls, the gnarled and rotting pieces of what had once been human. Gripped by horror, breath coming in ragged gasps, I forced myself to move, the truth tumbling through my mind like a stone in a river. This forest was a graveyard, a mausoleum where despair took root, feeding on the souls that wandered too close to its maw. As I turned, a glint caught my eye. A small, tarnished locket lay nestled amongst the bones. Desperate for any connection to Lila, I knelt to retrieve it. The moment my fingers brushed against the cool surface, flares of memory ignited in my mind, images of laughter, of warmth, of my daughter. But the clarity faded as I heard the soft crunch of leaves behind me, a reminder that I was not alone. "Who is there?" I declared, more bravely than I felt, churning dread into involuntary anger. The shadows congealed, unseen eyes watching from the edges of the clearing. I felt them coiling like snakes, greedily cataloguing my terror. "Such a brave mortal," a voice echoed, sultry and mocking, drawing closer. "Diving recklessly into the abyss of despair for what?" The shadows expanded, their gnarled forms materializing into amorphous shapes that writhed and twisted, pooling together like melting wax. "You think you can rescue her?" They laughed, a distorted symphony of horror tinged with malicious glee. "You're already too late. They belong to us now." "No!" I screamed, clenching the locket tightly, its familiar weight grounding me even as the echoes of laughter morphed into a cacophony of distorted cries. I could feel the darkness surging around me, a living entity that sought to consume me. And then, they surrounded me, cold, sinewy hands reaching out, grazing my skin with icy fingers, wrapping like chains. The darkness tightened its grip, pulling me deeper into its malevolent embrace. I steadied myself, pushing through the swell of despair, heart racing as Lila's voice pierced the veil of shadows. "Mommy, please. Find me." Her call resonated through the ocean of malevolence, a tether to my very soul. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." I screamed, my throat raw with desperation, urging myself to move, to resist the grasp of the shadows. But then, the laughter crescendoed into a discordant roar, and I felt my feet slipping. With a sudden jolt, the ground beneath me gave way, and I plummeted into an infinite void, the echoes of Lila's cries fading into a chilling silence as the shadows closed in, whispering, "You'll be one of us soon." In that moment, I understood, I was not just fighting for my daughter. The very essence of my being was on trial, dragged into the murky depths of a darkness from which no light could penetrate. Then, amid the chaos, a burning clarity emerged within the murk. There was something else in that darkness, something more insidious just waiting to be awakened. That realization, in the grip of such profound horror, brought forth a primal scream, echoing into a perpetual night, just as I felt the clawing fingers of the forest wrap around me, ready to claim their next victim. I awoke to an eerie silence, the haunted forest buzzing with an unsettling stillness as if the world's breath was held. My heart raced with the remnants of the previous night's nightmares. The child, my daughter Lila's name echoed in my mind like a ghostly song, a chilling reminder that I was still trapped in this cursed wood. The sun spilled weak morning light through the tangled branches above, casting elongated shadows that seemed to whisper secrets too sinister to comprehend. I staggered to my feet, brushing off the foliage that clung to my clothes. "Lila!" I shouted, but the forest, alive with solitude, swallowed my voice like a hungry beast. My only answer was a faint rustling among the trees, the kind of wind that carried secrets long forgotten. With renewed determination, I plunged deeper into the woods, every step heavy with the burden of my past choices and the scenes I could not forget. The shadows twisted around me, taunting and beckoning, a dark caress that promised both anguish and clarity. I fought against the pull of despair threading through my bones, pushing forward. Suddenly, a familiar shape emerged from the underbrush, a glimpse of white, bright against the darkened greens. Hope surged within me. There, standing motionless, was Lila. "Mommy!" she called, her voice light and innocent amid the sinister atmosphere. I rushed toward her, heart soaring, but as I drew closer, a wave of dread crashed over me. Lila's form was translucent, flickering like a fading flame, and in that moment, every instinct screamed at me that something was wrong. "No, no. Stay with me," I pleaded, reaching out only to find her slipping through my fingers, ethereal and cold. "Help me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You have to help us." "Us?" I gasped, stunned and shaking. "Who else is here?" But she only stared at me, those innocent eyes reflecting a depth of sorrow and agony far beyond her years. In that moment, the world around me warped, shadows swirling, and the laughter I had come to dread filled the air once more, sinister and mocking. "You've awakened her," echoed a chorus of disembodied whispers, vibrating through the air. "Now you face the price." Chilling realization sank into my bones. I had set something free, a truth embedded in the heart of this dark place. What price? I demanded, though deep down, I already feared the answer. From the underbrush emerged the figures of those I had seen before, faces pale and gaunt, their expressions caught in eternal mourning. They gathered around, their eyes hollow yet filled with desperate longing. I locked eyes with one familiar visage, a boy, his eyes wide in terror, and I recognized him, the boy from the beginning who had beckoned me into the woods. "Join us," he whispered, reaching out a skeletal hand. "You can end this. Give in to the darkness. Become one of us." Panic surged within me. I stumbled backward, grappling with the revelation that this forest thrived on the souls it ensnared. The innocent children and the echoes of their once bright laughter twisted into sinister calls for salvation. "No. I want tea," I gasped, turning away from his outstretched hand, but the shadows crept closer, insistent and hungry, wrapping around my legs with a chilling grip. "Mommy, please. They want me," Lila cried, her voice held together by frantic urgency. "You must choose." Her words cut through the chaos like a blade, tugging at the threads of reality intertwined with the fabric of this eternal nightmare. "Choose." I gasped, my heart racing as clarity washed over the dread. "Choose what? To save you or save myself?" "Yes." The chorus crowded closer, voices entwining in a symphony of sorrow. "Or lose both, forever." The darkness thickened, claiming the space around me, pulling. I felt myself teetering on the precipice of a decision that could doom us both, the whispers thick with wicked glee, urging me to surrender. But then, through the thick veil of despair, a glimmer of a memory sparked, a moment in time when Lila was more than this haunted vision, the laughter of my sweet girl intertwining with the ghostly moans of desperation in the void before me, staring into the wretched faces circling me. An unsettling realization dawned: their anguish was not just a plea for release but something more sinister brewing beneath, an evil rooted in desperation. The forest was alive, feasting on the grief of mothers like me, tormenting wandering souls in exchange for a fleeting taste of misery and despair. They demanded one sacrifice to unleash another, a cycle of torment eternally spun. No! I shouted, arms outstretched, fueled by the fiery love I still held for my daughter. Not Lila. Not now. In that moment of defiance, strength surged within me, a powerful beam shattering the shadows as I turned to Lila, drawing her close with fierce determination. I will never choose. I yelled, pushing against the dark forces drawing nearer, relentless and seething with malice. You will not take her. But the shadows roared in protest, a cacophony of tortured screams and twisted laughter surging forth. The ground beneath me trembled, and the figures lunged forward, clawing and grasping, fighting to reclaim what they had lost, their despair a palpable force that surged toward us in a haunting whirlwind. Suddenly, the light surrounding my daughter flickered, and through the chaos, I saw the truth reflected in her eyes, a darkness far deeper than I had ever anticipated, a secret held hostage within her very being. "Mommy, help them," she whispered, her voice shifting into something foreign, a command masked in childlike innocence. "Let me go." One frantic heartbeat silenced everything, the terror and panic folding in upon itself, and I understood she was already bound to this forest, caught in the web of its darkness. "No!" I screamed, realization crashing over me like a tidal wave. "I won't lose you." But the weight of despair bore down heavily, pulling her away, stretching the connection thinner and thinner, and one final moment slipped between us, a fracturing click of understanding, the weight of her ghostly smile etched in my memory. In an instant, the forest erupted, a blinding flash as the dark forces lashed out, forcing me to make a choice I never wanted to confront. I grasped the locket tighter, hearing her laughter and the beckoning of the spirits merging in one bitter symphony. The child that had once been mine now flickered like a dying flame, caught between two forces. The shadows howled with satisfaction, nourishing on my tears, whispering jagged promises of what they would claim. And then, as the abyss yawned before me, an anguished cry erupted from my lips, reverberating through the very core of my existence, collapsing the barriers between a mother's love and the sheer terror of the limitless dark that I in that moment of total surrender, as I felt the whirlwind of shadows swirl around me, the chilling truth of the forest's grip settled in. With one final desperate plea, my heart shattered, and all-consuming darkness swallowed my scream, morphing my world into a cacophony of swirling despair, and I understood this was not a story of courage, but of choices made beneath the weight of unbearable sorrow. As I faded, drawn deeper into the abyss, that haunting whisper echoed in my mind, "You don't know what you have unleashed," and in that silence, the memory of Lila flickered in the darkness, transformed into something terrifyingly powerful, a new entity rising from the shadows, hungry for vengeance. And I realized, as the horrors unfolded, that fear was only the beginning. The end was simply another beginning, a cycle forever spinning in the haunting dance of a mother's love. "Join us," the forest sang, an echo that would linger far beyond my final breath.